Let's get back to it. I would like to welcome our next guest, who is an entrepreneur, an engineer, and also the owner and chairman of the Sacramento Kings basketball team, Vivek Ranadivé. Thank you. All right, so this is not anywhere in my questions, but you got to tell me about the jacket.
It's pretty cool, isn't it?
It's very cool. Tell me about it. I see there's a patch. I don't know what's on it.
Yeah, well, it's got the Kings.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's Kings on that side. Okay.
Yeah, well, I was at the All-Star game a year ago in Cleveland, and there was this guy sitting next to me. He was wearing this cool jacket. And I said, hey, that's a cool jacket. And he just took it off and gave it to me. And he's a famous designer. He made the NBA 75-year jackets. And so I said, hey, this is a cool opportunity. So why don't you design one for me and the Kings? And I think we sold them out we charged like $1,000 a jacket, and we sold them out in a minute.
So let me ask what's maybe an uncomfortable question. There's obviously a basketball game going on down the street tonight. You used to be part owner of the Golden State Warriors before you sold that so that you could buy the Kings.
Yeah.
The Warriors obviously were the ones who knocked out your team. But you also live in Atherton. So who do you root for tonight?
I just want both of them to lose.
Is that something new? I mean, you're on the board of governors, right? Can you make that work?
Well, what's crazy is I've been on the competition committee, and I'm a guy who grew up in Bombay. We played like cricket and soccer. And I'm sitting between like Michael Jordan and Chris Paul making up the rules of the game. What a great country.
I'll ask one other question about this game. So you want them both to lose. Who do you think is going to win tonight? Just tonight.
Well, I think the bookies are saying that the Warriors are going to win.
So you go with the bookies?
I think...
Is that an official NBA position, go with the bookies?
Well, no. But actually, I think it's going to be a close game.
So you bought the Kings in 2013, and since then there's been 7 other NBA clubs that have changed hands, which is a lot.
Right.
Why do you think, it seemed to used to be in pro sports, the teams almost became family businesses and were passed down almost from generation to generation. What is driving, from your perspective, this boom in pro sports teams getting sold, not just in the NBA, but you're seeing in the Premier League and the NFL, et cetera?
Yeah, so a lot of these people bought teams for millions of dollars, and these teams are now worth billions of dollars. And there aren't actually that many sales, and they usually, someone passes away or someone is forced to sell. Because it's really, really hard to own a team. And so once you own that team, you do hold on to it. But the values have just gone through the roof. So if you look at the NBA, the returns have been over 20% a year. It's grown faster than the S&P or any other index. And this is an amazing asset class. It's as safe as a T-bill, but it's got the upside of a growth stock.
Do you feel there's any particular reason? It's interesting. It feels that every time a team gets sold, I'm from Boston, right? So I think of when the Celtics got sold, and this is now almost 20 years ago, and that price people kind of opened their eyes at. Ballmer buying the Clippers, and obviously what just happened with the Suns, rather.
Yeah.
Does it ever plateau? Is there a reason for it to plateau? Is there a factor that you'd be like, oh, these things aren't going to keep going up and to the right?
Yeah, so when I joined Joe, and he was the chairman of the vice chairman at the time, and we paid $450 for the Warriors, and the equity check was about $300, and people said that was crazy. And then later on, I paid $535 for the Kings, and when I did that, I said that no, these things are worth billions. So in 20 years, will I still be using my iPhone? I don't know, but will I still be watching NBA basketball? For sure.
Is the underlying business that much better today than it was 20 years ago? Or is it simply that there's just scarcity and more very wealthy folks?
I think it's both. So I think there's kind of a perfect storm. So on the one hand, the content value just keeps going up and up. So we're in the process of negotiating a new contract. And this is the only content that you're not going to time shift. You're going to watch it as it happens. And then you also have the games becoming more global, so that's kind of a second vector. And then finally, historically illiquid markets are now becoming more liquid, so we've opened the net, so pension funds and private equity and other people can now participate in ownership. So when you combine all those forces, the values are just going to keep going up.
Private equity funds in the NBA specifically are allowed to invest now, but they can only own minority stakes. You can't be a private equity fund cannot be a control owner of an NBA team. Should that be changed? Should private equity fund be allowed to be you?
I think that the way the NBA has it makes sense. I think that there's really two aspects. One is getting the appreciation and value, which is really what the funds want for their investors. But there's also the governance. And it's important to keep the governance tight because really at the end of the day, one person has to call the shots.
What are your thoughts? The NBA is now about to allow, or is going to allow, individual players, active players, to have ownership stakes, small, obviously, ownership stakes in teams. What are your thoughts about that? And particularly, and I guess, and this is my own ignorance on trying to understand it, can one of your players buy a piece of the Warriors?
Yeah, I think, look, it's a great asset class. And so if people want to own, I actually tried to convince the league to let me keep my ownership in the Warriors. After
to own both? To own a piece of both?
Yeah, and I said I'd keep it in a trust because
Then you'd have
I'm
to
just
have a
very
different
bullish.
jacket.
No, it's just an economic thing. So obviously I'd want to beat them every single time, but which we will. But I just think that it's a great asset class, and hey.
But I'm curious. Could you foresee a player? Could you foresee Sabonis, for example, owning a piece of the New York Knicks or any other team that you guys might be playing against? And just like players can't, for example, bet on basketball, pro players can't play. Is there just an inherent conflict if that happens, or not?
I think right now people would look at it as a conflict, but even just the owners, like there's so much. When you sit in the room with the other 29 owners, many of them are running giant funds. And there's so much, there's literally $1 trillion of money in that room.
Yeah.
And so if you want to invest in some of the other teams, I think you should be able to, because I think it's a great asset class.
I'm curious, if you're a fan of an NBA team, say I'm a fan of the Kings or was a fan of the Kings and you buy it, or I'm a fan of the Celtics and somebody else buys it, random billionaire X, should I as a fan care a lot? In other words, does it really matter to me who owns the team, so long as they've actually got the money to buy the team and, invest in the players?
Yeah, I think that it should matter because you want somebody who's got a long-term commitment to winning, but also to the community and the city. It's a privilege to own a team, and increasingly it's a platform. So we've used it to do a lot of good in our community. And we invested like $1 billion into the downtown, and that's created a 10x amplifying effect in terms of other investments that have come in. So when I look at it, we don't really own the team. The team is owned by the fans. It's owned by the city. It's owned by the media, and we're just like stewards.
I'm not sure you would. I'm not sure the fans in Oakland would feel that way about their teams and what's happening right now.
And that's and the fans in Sacramento saved the team because Bama was going to move the team to Seattle. And they got together and they got on social media.
Can I ask, how do you feel? Am I right in saying that in the NBA, and we haven't had teams moving lately, but you have a vote in that, right? If a team is to move, what's your fundamental philosophy on if a team were to move, how you vote on that? Because obviously you are ripping the hearts out of millions of people when you do that. Yeah,
so it's unfortunately I actually chair the committee where some of these things come up. It's like the worst committee. I don't know why I'm kind of the sucker they put in.
What's it called? What's this committee
It's
called?
called the planning committee.
Planning committee? That seems
you decide how to split the pie. And so if there's a market where it fundamentally just will never work, where the numbers will just never pencil out, then perhaps you need to look at where is there a better market.
How much of owning a pros? Actually, let me ask. You also own a minor league baseball team, correct?
That's correct.
There's obviously a billion differences between the NBA and a minor league baseball team, but are there any lessons that are there lessons from the Kings you've learned you've been able to apply to the baseball team and vice versa? Yeah, so I'm just very bullish on sports, and I'm also very foolish because I paid the highest price for the Kings. We just paid like more than double the highest price for a AAA team, but it's really more than a team. It's a social network. It's data. And so when I look at it as an incredible business with great data, with a great social network, and the ability to monetize that in all kinds of ways. So I think there's many lessons that
that are.
You made the comment about how you're not one of the things about live sports, I guess, in the NBA as part of this, is that people aren't going to time shift. So if the game's on at 7, they're going to watch the game at 7.
Yeah.
Since you bought the team, though, just in that relatively short period of time, consumption has obviously changed in terms of, not just in terms of where somebody watches a TV versus streaming, also in terms of people watching more highlights than games and stuff. Do you get a sense that fewer people are watching your entire games? And if so, how do you think about that from a monetization standpoint and also a product standpoint?
Yeah, so in terms of the actual TV ratings, they have come down, but that's because we've gone from cords to cord cutters to cord nevers. But the actual consumption has gone up. So in the case of the NBA, our social media consumption and the metrics on social media are actually bigger than all the other leagues combined. So I think that we just have to cater to the way that people want to consume it.
Can I ask about that? You mentioned that the rights deal's coming up. There's obviously a lot of things about regional sports networks, and you guys are a little different than that. But I guess kind of how do you think about broadcasting on local TV? Is the goal to make the most money or to reach the most people?
Well, I think the goal is to cater to fans in the way that they want to be catered to. And I think if you do that and you do a good job with that, then you will make the most money.
Adam Silver said at a conference recently, the NBA's got to kind of rethink the local model in terms of how games are broadcast locally. So I guess bluntly, is the regional sports network model broken?
Obviously there's some of them that are in bankruptcy right now. So I think it's definitely challenged. But I think it also represents opportunity.
How so? How would you fix it?
Yeah, I think the way that you consume it you have to have options for how people can consume the content. And in the case of the NBA, we're very lucky because the demographic is a young demographic, and they might consume it differently than an older demographic might. And we just have to be flexible and cater to that. And also the loyalty has shifted. And so that's also kind of interesting, where you might have been loyal 50 years ago to like ABC, and then you might have been loyal to the NBA, and then you might have been loyal to a team, and now it's kind of you're loyal to a player. You want to watch Steph or you want to watch Fox. And so we just have to be flexible and let people consume it in the way that they want.
I'll just jump this in. Or you might want to watch Harrison Barnes. Do you want to re-sign him?
Well, that's up to my GM, so that's beyond my pay grade.
Okay.
No, he's a good player. I love Harrison.
I hear that from owners. I leave that up to my GM, and I know you do, but do you?
Yeah. Well, it's basically so they come to you with recommendations, and I think of myself as kind of the chief irritant, where I just will ask a lot of annoying questions.
I'm wondering, do you feel, you'll hear some pro sports owners talk about how, again, we let the sports people deal with the sports piece of it. I know what I don't know. I came to this as an engineer. Do you feel, though, that you now today know more about the actual product, the actual stuff that happens on the court than you used to, and that you are smarter about it, and that you contribute more than you could have, say, 5 or 6 years ago? Yeah,
I got more involved about a year ago,
what drove that? Why did you get more involved?
Yeah, we had made some decisions, and they had not always been great, and I just wanted to make sure we got the right coach, and so I got involved in the coaching search and had like a 6-hour dinner at my house with Mike Brown, who we ended up with,
right,
and just kind of set the rules. And I said, look, things are going to be a little different, where we're going to have radical candor. We're just going to tell each other how we feel, but that's also going to be coupled with radical love, where there's always going to be love and support, and we can disagree, but after that we all speak with one voice. And so I spent a lot of time with him, which I hadn't done in the past, and we went to Europe together on a trip to watch Sabonis in Euro basketball. Spoke much more to the front office folks. And so I think we're in a great place where we all communicate. And
Going back to how people consume, one of the ways that more and more fans are consuming sports and not watching it or interacting with it is by betting, and particularly betting off your phone. Not something that's able to be done by people in California right now.
Yeah.
Do you want that changed? Do you want mobile?
Definitely. I think the game about the game is going to be even bigger than the game.
How do you feel that you, and not just you, but Joe with the Warriors and Ballmer, do you feel financially that your team is at any disadvantage because there's not a hometown gambling aspect to it?
I think right now the numbers are small, but I think over time it'll start becoming a factor.
So you made your money in tech. You're not just the owner of the Kings. You also are a venture capitalist with Bo, your firm, and some of the members of Bo were in the back earlier. How do you split your time? How much of your time is investing outside of sports compared to the Kings and the baseball team?
Yeah, so I let my folks at the Kings do most of the. I've got a great team, and they do most of the work. So I spend more time just looking at investment opportunities. But I'm also looking at investing in sports teams, so that continues to be an area of interest. But we talk often, so I literally am speaking to the business side, the basketball side, almost every day.
I need to obviously ask about the highest and this wasn't exactly through Bo, but it sort of was the highest profile deal you did in the last couple of years, which was buying WeWork via a SPAC. Let me ask this, I guess, as simply as I can, since the stock's trading about 50 cents. What's gone wrong since you invested?
Yeah, I think that when we did it, there was a lot of scar tissue on the company. It's actually a very good business, and it's almost like a $4 billion company. But in the kind of the Adam Newman era, there had been a lot of stuff that had gone on that had spooked.
Do you think you underestimated how much scar tissue there was?
I think that I underestimated the perception that people had about the scar tissue. I think I believe it's a great business, and flex space is here to stay. We have a product that we launched where it's called All Access. It's like a black card. You pay a couple of $100s a month, and you can swipe it in any of the 800 locations around the world. And that thing has become like a $250 million a year business. It's just pure gravy. So there's a lot of great aspects to the business.
You mentioned Adam Newman. I'm just curious, when he raised an enormous amount of money from Andreessen for his new startup, you read that and thought what?
Well, Adam, I don't know if you've ever met him. But
I have, yeah.
Okay, he's amazing. He's a very charismatic guy.
Charismatic, yes.
And he's, he came to my house. He doesn't wear shoes. And
Wait, so you met him previously? So wait,
yeah.
So why?
Well, he called me up and said, "Will you help me save this company?"
Really?
Yeah. So that's
after he's out of it, long after he's out of it.
Yeah. So the company was struggling.
Right.
And so he called me up and said, "Hey, can you help me save the company?" And so I had a long chat with him, and I said, "Tell me everything that went wrong." And I was struck by just how candid he was. And he said, "These are all the mistakes I made." And so that's really what got me interested, because he laid out the vision and he laid out what had gone wrong and what was right. And I still believe very strongly in the business. I think that the race is this company going to run out of money first, or is it going to become cash flow positive first? And I think that is kind of the overhang that's been on the business. And they've just raised a bunch of money, so I think that's gone. I think it's a great business. I think it's the future of office space.
Future office, do you feel the part of the bet you made that maybe went upside down was that more people were going to return to the physical offices than have so far?
Well, if you look at the occupancy in Europe, it's very high. It's literally 90%. I think there were a lot of locations where they had signed bad leases, and that's really what bit them.
You mentioned that you're on the competition committee in the NBA, so we have 30 seconds left, so I have two quick questions for you. One, if you could make any one change to the actual game unilaterally, what's your change?
I think that I would...
Please say you want to raise the baskets. You want to raise the baskets, right?
No. The game's actually in a really good place right now, but I still would... the way that some of the fouls, it would be more a point of emphasis that the way that the fouls are being called I think they need to lighten that up and let them just play.
And then final question. I know you can't bet on your phone right now because it's illegal, but if you were, who's going to win the title?
Well, is it possible for no one to win it? So.
No, outside of a pandemic, no. Somebody's got to win. It's like 6 teams left. Pick a team, any team.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be Lakers and Sixers.
Lakers. And who wins that? Who wins Lakers Sixers?
I think, I hate to say it, because we don't like the Lakers in Sacramento, but I think it's hard to bet against LeBron. So.
Vivek, thanks so much.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.